Now, when we go ahead and look back at the sequel trilogy movies, a lot of fans tend to criticize exactly what happened by J.J. Abrams or Rian Johnson or even Kathleen Kennedy at all of that, and exactly how a lot of them contributed to pretty much devaluing the Star Wars brand and really bringing it to a different level to the point that divided the entire fan base. This is Mike Zero. Make sure to subscribe if you are new to the channel for future Star Wars updates. Also, by the way guys, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel. I thank you all so very much for the kind support. It is greatly appreciated. Now, one thing that, of course, a lot of fans have agreed on is that the sequel trilogy movies really kind of took away the spirit of the Star Wars universe and what George Lucas's vision was supposed to be like, and of course how it doesn't necessarily match the philosophy of the franchise that we got in the prequels and in the originals and even in Star Wars Legends at that. However, of course, a lot of people tend to blame, creators out there like J.J. Abrams in particular, when in reality, there was a lot more to the story than we really didn't know, and J.J. Abrams really put that straight recently, and set things straight, I should say, and really made it very much more transparent to the fans most recently. Now, as you all know, Disney has been trying to get J.J. Abrams back for Star Wars, and J.J. just keeps on refusing. He wants nothing to do with it ever again. He doesn't really want to come back, and guys, surprisingly, he didn't really want to come back for episode 9, but they really kind of pressured him into doing that, and we're going to talk more about that in a second. So, the thing about Bob Iger, he's back now as the Disney CEO. A lot of people aren't necessarily happy about that. Some fans are very, worried and skeptical. However, with Disney and Lucasfilm getting ready to hire new creatives to handle the franchise, in a recent interview with J.J. Abrams, he went on to reveal more about the sequel trilogy and his true feelings about Disney CEO Bob Iger at the time, who allowed to make controversial decisions with those movies. Now, J.J. went on to state the following to the fans. When I was working on both episodes 7 and 9, I knew that this wasn't the right thing to do, and I kept questioning the story decisions that were being forced upon me by Bob Iger at the time. I kept trying to convince him, and especially Kathy, that it would have been best, at least for episode 9, to use Trevorrow's script ideas, and they gave me an ultimatum to either leave this project where they will get somebody else who may not be the best fit for the job, or I can stay and make something that will become a major blockbuster. To me, in my mind, I started the sequels and I didn't want somebody else to end them in a horrific way. So I was essentially forced in a very tough position by Mr. Iger, which I didn't appreciate at all that much. It was honestly a little offensive to me as a creator. Now, I want to stop here for 1 second. Now, the thing about JJ is that he was really fighting to not come back for episode 9 in the beginning. Disney kept on bombarding him with emails and phone calls, come back for the last movie, come back. Because he didn't really, want to get involved with the middle film. He left. He had other things to actually work on too. And so he wanted to kind of leave Star Wars behind. And they eventually talked him in to coming back to replace Colin Trevorrow, because Colin got fired at last minute. The entire script was finished. It had to be completely changed. I mean, it was crazy. And this kind of really delayed the process of Star Wars Celebration and when the entire trailer was going to be released and all these crazy different things, right? What JJ wanted to do was he wanted to be more original this time. He didn't want to play things safe again, like how they did with episode 7. He didn't want to do that again. And so, what they had ended up doing was that they ended up, yes, kind of copying a lot of elements of Return of the Jedi. We got a Death Star, we got Palpatine using Force Lightning against Rey, kind of mimicking what happened between Luke and Palpatine, stuff like that. Little things like that. And sure, you can say it's poetry, it rhymes, and etc., etc. I get that. But JJ didn't want that. He wanted to be very original. He wanted to do something very new, like a brand new villain, a brand new climax, or a brand new ending to the actual trilogy, and really kind of keep Trevorrow's movie in spirit. He wanted to do that. And believe it or not, Colin Trevorrow had a lot of flashbacks planned for a young Luke Skywalker. That was going to be a very big deal. So, moving on to the next thing here of what JJ has to say, alright? He stated, "I don't crave overpraise, but I know my status as a director and as a writer, and it felt like I was being treated as someone who didn't know what he was doing with this movie. I always felt bad for Colin, and I wanted to keep some of his ideas alive, and that I wasn't even allowed to do that from Bob Iger's instructions, as they wanted nothing of Colin's work to carry over. And that was my biggest problem with Bob at the time." Now, JJ also goes on to, elaborate that everything with the sequels kind of was a mess because they didn't really know what they were doing, they didn't know the direction they were aiming for, and that's why, with each and every movie, it kind of feels, like nothing connects properly. You guys may recall, we had the Knights of Ren and Kylo Ren in the rain, in that vision in The Force Awakens. What was that all about? That was never explained, right? Things like, where did Luke Skywalker's saber come from? That was never explained. They never wanted to touch that. And of course, you get a couple of hints here and there in the comics, and how it connects to Maz Kanata a little bit. But moving on from that, J.J. Abrams really putting Bob Iger on full blast here, and really putting him in the hot seat, and how a lot of it did have to do with Bob Iger and Kathleen Kennedy, these two individuals that really forced it upon JJ to make Episode 9 the way that they wanted to make it. Now, I will be honest with you guys. As much as Palpatine shouldn't have come back for that last movie, it really made the movie all the more interesting. Could you imagine Episode 9 without Palpatine the way it is now? I feel like that the movie would just be very flat and boring, at the very minimum. If you had no villain on the scale of Palpatine, I just don't see where they would have gone. Now Colin Trevorrow's idea was to actually have Kylo Ren as the big bad villain. That's what he wanted to do, make him the real new villain, and show him as a perfected dark side user. That's what they wanted to do. And then have Tor Valum, who, by the way, was planned to be a new villain that Kylo Ren visits, who was the master of Darth Plagueis, Darth Tenebris. And they wanted to do that in, of course, everything related to the new lore and how they're going to change things up with Star Wars Legends quite a bit in Episode 9 with the whole Plagueis, Tenebris, and Venomous connection, all these different things, right? So overall, there's a lot of things that are and have been happening. JJ has been a lot more talkative, trying to set the record straight, trying to put it out there that it wasn't really all his fault about what happened with Episode 9 and what happened with Episode 7, and you know what? I mean, to a degree, JJ could have just declined. He really could have just declined if he didn't want to do it all this much, let's be honest and clear. But overall, I would love to hear what each and every one of you have to say about this below in the comments, and if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel. I thank you all so very much for the kind support, and I'll catch you guys next time.
Gun in hand, we are alone again. From night to moon, we hear them moans again.